All right, let's talk more on this then when I'm joined in studio by senior reporter Mahlako Komane. A very good afternoon to you, Mahlako. All right, this happens year after year. We have these sort of conversations. And let's talk then about what the latest then is in terms of placement offers. I'm hearing there, Panyaza Lusufi, talking about these SMSs that will be received by parents, and of course that process that we've now become quite accustomed to. But let's talk about what's new.
Well, today, Flo, in terms of what's new, in terms of the placement offer specifically, is that parents initially used to you have your 5 schools that you've applied to. Let's pretend you meet the criteria for all 5 and you get accepted on all 5. So what would happen when the SMSs would begin going out previously was that you'd get offers at all 5 schools. That would be, once you log onto the system, they would appear. You would then choose which one you wanted out of the 5. Yeah. So this year they've moved away from that. Then what they've done is that they have, it's literally take it or leave it. We've given of your 5 choices that you've made, you'll get a school. This is where your child is going to school. Take it or leave it. That's basically what is new this year, is that the offers are not there in terms of the multiple offers that you'd normally find. The reason that was given for this is that you'd remember that this multiple offers that came in meant that the SMSs would then be released in batches. So what this means is that you'd have to wait for Mahlako as a parent to decide whether she's going to accept school A, B, C, or D. And once that is, I've accepted, I've taken my school that I want for my child, the other 4 go back into the system, then we're able to open up a space for the next child. So they're saying that it's tedious, it's a lot of administration that goes into that. So what they're doing is this is the school that you're giving to your child as from the 5 that you've accepted, and the show must go on.
All right, and let's talk about what that criteria is. I mean, I gave a silly example of air to you of, if Flo was to come there and say, let me pay for the year, and please will you accept my child based on the fact that I'm not even giving you problems, here I am. I mean, what is the general criteria if I say I actually am married to the idea of sending my child to this particular school?
Flo, the issue of criteria, he spoke about it, he spoke about it at length. He said the key criteria that he said was home address. So they're saying they want to eliminate the issue of children having to travel far and wide for schooling. For them as well as a department, I suppose, where they do offer scholar transport, it would mean that they would save that because children are within that, radius in terms of where they attend school. Second one that he spoke about was the sibling. He spoke about the sibling and previous school. So if I, as Mahlako, my child was at this particular school, or there's a sibling in that particular school, but that is the second criteria. But the biggest criteria is home address. But where that places us, it gives some parents a conundrum in the sense that there are certain schools or certain areas that are problematic. I won't call them problematic as per se. They define them as high pressure areas in terms of where you see a lot of developments happening. But the rate at which government or the department is building schools, public schools in that area is not the same. Yeah. And you'd see this is where private schools are beginning to coin it. These middle income type of schools that you see that are popping up everywhere as a result of government not being able to build public schools fast enough. In those type of areas, you would find that within a block there's one school, there's about 600 parents that actually qualify. They meet that 5-kilometer radius for that school, but they can't go all in and be given space at that particular school because roughly, the placement in terms, the spaces that you'd get at those entry grades, which is grade 1 and your grade 8, would sit at about 200, perhaps 250 if it's quite a big school.
Yeah, and how, when we're talking about high pressure areas, high pressure schools, what is then being done to alleviate that sort of pressure from these particular schools? And I just want to put a secondary, question to this. We know, the system of apartheid, what it did in terms of the Group Areas Act and so forth. So when we're talking about a 5-kilometer radius at a very good school, we're talking, probably a majority of the white minority living in that particular section, which then talks about an issue of discrimination, which I think that Panyaza Lusufi himself has spoken about quite widely on this particular issue, and to hear that this is something that might still actually then continue is quite problematic. But let's talk about how we alleviate the pressure on these particular schools then.
I'm glad you actually brought up that question, Flo. In terms of the high pressure, let me give you the official word. Let's talk about the official word. In terms of the high pressure areas, what he's saying is that they're giving SGBs between 2 and 5 million rand to build classrooms, additional classrooms at those particular schools. But when you look at the numbers that we saw today in terms of the applications at those particular schools, just the top 10, you're sitting at a space of 200, 180 placements that are available for a particular grade and 2,500 applications. That in itself is 3-4 give and take schools that you would need, to be able to accommodate that particular, need in terms of that particular school. So you actually do need schools besides the classrooms and the mobile classrooms, because it's also spacing is also quite an issue. But he said that is what they were doing. We spoke about particularly Alberton, Pretoria North. If you remember about 2-3 years, and in fact 3-4 years ago, we saw scenes in Pretoria North where district officials were beaten by some parents because they were unhappy with placements. Similar scenes also played out at Alberton, where we saw, they had to even call in police to tear gas parents because parents were quite upset because those areas, he says that the rate of development is going faster than what they are able to build schools. So that is going to continue. Let's just be honest. In a few weeks, we are going to go to those areas. Similar problems from parents, where parents are saying, well, I've been given a school 30 kilometers away from where I live. It's almost, it's going to happen. Yeah. But in terms of good schools, because that is also a conversation that should be had, and I think perhaps it is being had, is that there are some schools that are seen as good schools, but also it comes to these are schools in terms of the economics. If you look at those schools, those are fee-paying schools. The majority of those schools that you find on those on that top 10 list, but except for one that is in Germiston, he was quite proud of saying that it's got so many such a high number of applicants. But you also need to consider, where is it built? Is it built around an area where there's a lot of squatter camps? Because we do know that Ekurhuleni has one of the highest concentration of squatter camps, especially in that Germiston area. If you look at the Makaus, that's another topic for another day. But in terms of the other schools, it's also a money's game, Florence. The more you pay for school fees, it's the more you're going to get out of the school fees. The conversation that you find people having is that we do see MEC Lisufi is pumping quite a lot of money into township schools. He's building wonderful schools, but are parents happy with what happens inside those buildings? It's all great and wonderful to have a big building, but is the teacher commitment? Is the leadership at the school such that they are committed to that which they are there to do, which is to educate children? Just in closing, Flo, if you remember, I think 2 years or 3 years ago, we went to Ivory Park where we saw those bogus schools that had just flung up. One of the conversations I had with parents, a lot of them actually quite aware that these schools were not registered, saying that it was the language of instruction that they were interested in, hence they were taking their children to school there. So the question, I think, in the conversation that should be had is that, is the education system catering to the needs of the world as it is today? All right,
Mahlako, thank you very much to you, the senior SABC News reporter. They're talking, of course, about school placements, which the Gauteng Education MEC Panyaza Lesufi is currently, in fact, busy with, saying that parents and guardians who applied for grades 1 to 8 placements will start to receive SMSs from tomorrow.